Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Hoops HD. This is our Under the Radar podcast where we are in mourning, David. What happened tonight?
Well, I don't know if you saw what happened New Year's Eve, but we're going to start with a team of the people. And New Year's Eve, they were playing their arch rivals Dartmouth and that stupid mascot Kagi, who I can't freaking stand. And at the end of the game, New Hampshire won the game. They hit a last-second game-winning shot, but the clock operator made the mistake of starting the clock too early, so the clock ran out before he got the shot off, and it ended up not counting. So they lose that. And then the night they come home, I was still upset. You were still upset. I'm sure they were still upset. And it's just hard to refocus after you've been so unjustly robbed the way that New Hampshire was, and they lost tonight against Stony Brook in their conference opener. So it's been a residual effect, and it's all Kagi's fault.
Yeah, I think it's time that we get things turned around here. We know we have you there in New Hampshire. You're going to be doing a little pep speech for the team tomorrow morning, I believe. Is that correct?
That's the plan, yes. I plan on showing up and speaking to the team and trying to just get them motivated and turned around.
Okay.
Are you going to be sober or drunk for that speech?
I'll just be how I always am.
This is our Under the Radar podcast. I'm your host, Chad Sherwood, David Griggs, and John Sleeka with me as well. And for those of you that really want to see everything in full, you want to go, I believe, up above us, David. Is that where it is on the website?
Up there.
You want to go up above us and watch first our bracket rundown show that we recorded about an hour ago. So tonight, in that bracket rundown show, we built a seed list from 1 all the way through 48. And what we're going to do tonight as a special treat for you in the Under the Radar is go ahead and build the rest of the teams in here, fill in all the Under the Radar teams, and as we fill in teams, we're going to be discussing each of these conferences. As I pull up the screen share, in fact, David, can you remind everybody what it means to be under the radar?
Yes, under the radar means that it's any school that isn't in a regular multi-bid league. That would be the 5 power conferences, the SEC, ACC, Big 10, Big 12, and Pac-12, as well as the 4.5 other leagues, the 4 full ones being the Big East, the Atlantic 10, the American, and the West Coast, new to this league this year. The other half one being the Mountain West, who, if you can see the seed list here, is not in the field yet. So we will be discussing them on this podcast as if they were an under-the-radar school. The other eliminator is that any team that is ranked in one of the Human Polls top 25 is by definition on the radar. So they would be talked about during the regular Hoops HD report, not this podcast.
Okay, and there aren't any of those among these conferences. And as you mentioned, David, no Mountain West team when we did this earlier. So before we actually start filling in the rest of these teams, though, we did have 3 normal under-the-radar conferences that did get teams in during our earlier show, our bracket rundown show, beginning at number 37 here on the 10 line, Wichita State. So I want to talk a little Missouri Valley, and I'm going to actually switch screens here, and we're going to have the Missouri Valley standings pull on up here with Wichita State and Illinois State both out to 3-0 starts. And you can also see some of the key upcoming games there. Sleeka, let me start with you here. How about this Illinois State team? We didn't actually discuss them earlier, but are we looking at a potential team that could contend for an at-large bid here now with this start that they're off to?
Well, they just got a nice win over Missouri State yesterday, so that's certainly a good start. And they had a somewhat encouraging showing out at Diamond Head, but didn't quite get off to the start that we would expect them to. But as long as they're peaking right now in the Valley, it's going to be gravy if they can get past Wichita.
If they finish in first place outright, I think they're in. Even if they don't, if they get 1 of 2 against Wichita and then blow through the rest of the field, I think they're going to be close.
Got listed over here. This is a new feature. We start with the Hoops HD report this week. In this last column here, the key upcoming games. Circle this one here on Sunday. While Northern Iowa is not that good, this has become one of the better matchups in the last few years here in the Missouri Valley. It could be a very heated game here with Wichita at UNI, David.
It could be Northern Iowa, shockingly terrible this year. I know that they were rebuilding some, but Ben Jacobson typically does a good job. I didn't think they would be NCAA tournament good or maybe even NIT good, but I thought they'd be better than 4-9. Good God.
But it's also surprising to see the trees down at the bottom with them,
Yeah.
especially after they bounced back from a bad Advocare turn. Well, not a bad Advocare, but a hard luck tournament. Followed up by the
Yeah, John, a very interesting stat. I was actually watching Indiana State's game yesterday. With their loss last night, they're now 0-7 when wearing their blue uniforms, 6-2 when not. So I think they got to get rid of those blue uniforms. That's the only problem.
Right. And it's official with Indiana State losing the other night and Butler beating Villanova. That is now an upset. It was declared not an upset by some idiot. I forget in the media.
Yeah, some guy, JR, they leaves his initials.
John Rusty. Oh, yeah, that guy. Right.
Let's
I honestly couldn't remember who said that.
Besides Wichita State, we also put in here on the 11 line, number 44 overall, UNC Wilmington out of the Colonial, getting in above 3 at-large teams here, Michigan, VCU, and Miami. So obviously, David.
Yeah, they are inside the bubble. That's the Missouri Valley, Chad.
It's coming. It's coming.
Did Wilmington move to the Missouri Valley? I haven't seen the news today.
It takes me a couple seconds to switch the screens around, David. I only have 2 hands as opposed to who has none.
Oh, well, if you want to get chippy about it.
There's your Colonial.
Yeah, like this Wilmington team, I don't think anyone else has a shot at landing inside the bubble from this conference. A good story here. We talk about them every week. College of Charleston, very much improved. Like what they're doing. How about Northeastern? Surprisingly good this year.
Yeah, I actually wanted to pull them up. And John, Northeastern, not only the win at Michigan State, which was obviously the highlight, but they came out I think they totally crushed Delaware by about 300 points tonight. Let's get that final score. 90-54. It wasn't even that close.
It's actually nice to know that we have 2 Beanpot schools that have been reliable in college hoops of late. Not just Northeastern, but also Harvard that we'll get into a little bit later. But yes, as you can see, a nice 6-game winning streak after a 3-game skid that did include a loss at their crosstown neighbor, Harvard.
Yeah, but David's right. I think this Northeastern team could be dangerous. And when Northeastern does host Wilmington, and that would be coming up not till February 16th, very dangerous game.
Yeah.
Actually, David, interested there. Wilmington, 2 of their last 4 games are Wilmington against Northeastern. Strange scheduling there.
Yeah, it is.
And Charleston there, too. With anyhow, let's go back here, possibly. Maybe not. We seem to be having a little bit of technical issues. Let's see. Do we have the screen back up again?
It's the big. There
it goes.
All right, there it is.
There it is. Okay, sorry about that. Had to close down an extra screen here. Middle Tennessee was the 3rd of our under-the-radar teams that did get in inside the bubble here. I don't know that everyone agreed, but David, you campaigned for both these teams here, and I was the final arbitrator and gave you both of them inside the bubble. Middle Tennessee, a thrilling 1-point road win at Rice tonight, though, as we pull up possibly, maybe not. There it is. There's Conference USA standings. RPI 17 now, though.
Yeah, I mean, their RPI's up there, but it's because of, like, the teams that they've played. They've played other good under-the-radar teams, and that's inflating it. And they've been really effective, and they've looked really good all throughout the season. Got us scared tonight. I think tonight is their toughest remaining game on the schedule at Rice. A really good Rice team. You see Marshall out to a good start there. Western Kentucky out to a good start. But they didn't show the muscle out of conference that Middle Tennessee did. I think Middle Tennessee could run the table during the regular season, and if they do, I think they are inside the bubble.
All right. Well, let me go back over to the bracket rundown screen here. And Stalika, let me start with you. Now, those are the 3 conferences that we did already put teams in. We've got from 49 through 68 to go. So who would be your team number 49, your next automatic bid winner?
That would be out of the Horizon Conference, and that would be the Valpo Crusaders.
The Valparaiso Crusaders. Let's go ahead and we're going to put them in there. Apologize for any formatting problems that we're having there. I'll get that cleaned up by the time we do the next one of our shows here. But Valpo out of the Horizon League. We'll pull up the Horizon League standings here. 11-3 right now. But John, what about Oakland? Aren't they the best team in the conference?
Well, they may be the best team in the conference if you're going strictly by Joe Lunardi and his bracketology. But I think we've also taken a little bit of a higher standard here and also look at their overall body of work. So, I mean, I still give Valpo some credit for what they had done in terms of beating BYU and Alabama away from home, and also a Rhode Island team that should still be a contender as far as the Atlantic 10 goes. I mean, I know Oakland has beaten Georgia, but do they really have any other wins that would compare to that yet?
David, do they?
Not Oakland, no.
Okay.
And again, the Georgia win coming at home, whereas Valpo got theirs on the road. I am big on Valpo being probably the best team in this league. I'm suddenly not as sold on them as being an at-large caliber team. Only 3 losses, but the one against Santa Clara, you're really holding your nose on that one, and they lost at home, and Santa Clara kind of blew it open down the stretch there. So, and again, oftentimes it'll sound like we're picking on these teams. That's not really the point, but like Santa Clara was essentially, if a Power 5 team were to play them, you would call that a bye game and expect them to win it. It's no different for Valpo. If you're a tournament caliber team, you need to win that game, all of them.
Tell you what, I'm actually going to pull up the Valpo here. This is the same profile from ESPN.com that we're looking at during the bracket rundown. As you can see here, at Oregon, at Kentucky, but then you go way down that losses to RPI plus 150, and when you see a home game in there, it's just so hard to argue the team should be out large caliber when you see that.
Yeah.
You should not lose those games ever.
Right.
But I think by under the radar standards, let's not also overlook the win at Missouri State, which is also looking better and better as the season goes.
Yeah.
All right. Big game here coming up tomorrow night, though. Oakland is at Valpo. This is one of the 2 biggest games of the season, the other one being the return trip when they go back to Oakland. But really, that could be a real fun game tomorrow night.
So we're not highlighting Detroit at UIC then?
No, Detroit at UIC, between the team rated 312 in the Ken Palm and 241 in Ken Palm will not be highlighted. But we will be highlighting a game between 2 teams with very bad ratings a little bit later on tonight.
Yeah.
We'll get that in a bit here. But David, let me go to you here. Beyond Valpo, who would be the next team that we wanted to see?
Still not the Mountain West. I would have Texas Arlington next on the list. I actually had them above Valpo.
All right. And amazingly, we have now completed the 12 line, and we still do not have a Mountain West team. I'm going to go over here. Now that Texas Arlington is in the field, I'm going to go ahead and pull up the Sun Belt standings. And David, Texas Arlington, 12-3 right now with 33 RPI, 57 in the Ken Palm ratings. Real good season so far for the
real good season. Notable wins by under the radar standards, and for a minute you were thinking by at large standards. They have the win at Georgetown, a win at Texas, a pretty solid profile. And look at these wins away from home. Going to St. Mary's, that is a good win. I actually like this profile more than Valpo's when you look at the number of games they've won away from home and who they've come against. And another team that I like in this conference is
Arkansas State.
Yeah, Arkansas State, thank you. I was blanking there a second. And Little Rock kind of got off to a good start, but they've kind of slipped a little bit.
Yeah, we're going to pull up Arkansas State's schedule here as well. They had a few more slip-ups. That North Dakota State loss is not looking as bad anymore, but Alabama at Minnesota, but they don't have the big win to offset those, I don't think.
Right.
Georgetown, nice win, but the Hoyas seem to be falling apart here as well.
Yeah. And I misspoke. Arlington did not beat Georgetown. They beat better teams.
Okay, let me bring Texas Arlington's profile. Still have them right here. Texas Arlington has wins over Texas, over St. Mary's,
Yes.
over Bradley. They lost to Minnesota, Gulf Coast, and Arkansas.
Right. So.
Okay, Salika, let's move on to the 13 line. And are you gonna? Do you think we should go Mountain West now, or should we go somewhere else still?
I'm going to go to the mountains on the other side of the country or just outside of the mountains, and that would be the UT Chattanooga Mocs.
Whoa, way up there.
All right, Salika says that we should go with the Mocs on the start of the 13 line. Unlike our bracket rundown, we're not going to really debate these placements. We're going to more of use this to just kind of go ahead and show you who these teams are. Let's pull up the Southern Conference, though, John, and you went with them over both UNC Greensboro and East Tennessee State in this conference, though.
Yep, or even over Furman if you want to go strictly by standings.
No, we don't.
East Tennessee State was another team that I was starting to lose a little bit of faith on after they lost to Tennessee at home, although Tennessee has themselves been on a bit of a hot streak recently, so it's good to see that they're still unbeaten in SoCon play, albeit through just 2 games. But I think through overall body of work, I still like what Chattanooga has accomplished, even with a few losses that are starting to smell as we get throughout the year.
David, do you still think Chattanooga is the best team in the SoCon?
They haven't always looked it. The other night, just losing some of the games that they have, and not looking good out there.
They lost to USC Greensboro the other night, yep.
Yeah. And, they did that. I mean, we had that on when we were recording. I think it was under the radar. And it's just, I'm not as much of a believer in them. That's not.
This year is East Tennessee State, who is
That's East Tennessee State.
I was like,
winners of 5 of their last 6, a decent road win at Mississippi State. I think I'm liking them a little better. Now, I realize they're taking on the dregs here in VMI and the Citadel, but at least they blew through them.
And to be fair, I've also said Greensboro is a potential noisemaker in this conference.
Yes, and that's true.
Well, you were right, because they did beat Chattanooga, albeit at home. Greensboro then turned around and actually lost before that at home to Samford, though. So I haven't quite figured out if you're really right about that, or if that's just further proof that Chattanooga really is.
Samford much improved. Scott Padgett doing a great job there after inheriting a complete mess.
Yeah, off to an 11-5 start, 2-1. Big games coming up this week. Not much. Furman at Chattanooga, East Tennessee State at Mercer. David, I'm going to give you a shot at the next team here. Are you ready to go Mountain West yet?
I am. I have Nevada next in line.
Yeah, I was pushing for that 14 line. You didn't.
Yeah. Again, they were on there last year.
Oh, who you going before?
I still have Nevada. Boise State arguably I think the top of Boise State's profile is better, but the bottom of it is worse. And they say overall body of work, I think Nevada still has it. And I think Nevada's team's better. But an interesting question, since we're talking about the Mountain West here, we have no one inside the bubble, which means we're in the conference play now, and it's hard to play your way inside the bubble when you're not playing anyone that's inside the bubble. Does this conference get a team inside the bubble?
Well, I think you just said it with most of the hay in the barn. Probably the signature win that they have is going to be Boise State's win over SMU. I mean, that's not something you can retire on.
I think there is one way, and only one way, and it's this column that I highlighted right here. Somebody goes undefeated, 1 loss, that type of thing, blows away the conference and makes the conference tournament final. Given that everybody in the conference already has a loss other than Boise. And I got to tell you, one thing that I've liked about the Mountain West so far is almost every Mountain West game has come right down to the wire.
Oh, yeah, it's been exciting.
And some great games, which means that I don't think anybody's going undefeated. I think the first place finisher is going to have 4 or 5 losses, and there's no way it's going to come anywhere near the bubble.
Yeah, and it is rare. I mean, a little trivia. It is very rare for teams to make the tournament without at least one out-of-conference win of note. And, it happens, but if you look at the 48 teams that are inside the bubble, I'd say upwards of 40 of them beat a notable won an out-of-conference game against another team that's inside the bubble. So.
John, let me head back to you here. After Nevada, where are we going?
It's a team that's suddenly struggling of late, but I'm still going to go with Monmouth Hawks right here.
All right, we'll put the
Monmouth?
Monmouth Hawks right on in here. Out of the Metro Atlantic, John, you still have them as your Metro Atlantic champion despite the 2 losses now in conference to both Ryder and St. Peter's. You're not ready to give up on them?
Not ready to give up on them yet, not by a long shot, but I mean, those are certainly going to rival some of the losses that they had last year that were pretty bad. But let's not also forget, they were down pretty big against Ryder last year. Probably should have lost that game, but still managed to pull that one out of their rear end. So that was some revenge for the Bronx.
All right, well, this is the Monmouth schedule. David lost to North Carolina, and we're not surprised by it. But the Ryder and the St. Peter's losses now. Is there any forgiveness for them?
No, I don't think, and we said this the other night, I do not think there is a pathway for them to make the field except the automatic bid. If they win every single game until the conference final and lose that, maybe. But, I mean, these are, to the point we said earlier about Valpo, these are essentially bye games. Now, I know that they went to St. Peter, but still, these are games that if it were a Power 5 team, we'd write it up as a bye game and leave it at that. If you're a tournament caliber team, whether you're under the radar or not, the rules aren't any different. You have to win all of these. And I know it's a conference game, but it's against a bye game caliber opponent. They lost 2 of them.
They're going to have a pretty emotional one coming up tomorrow when Iona comes to Monmouth.
Right.
That's one of the key games. I want to bring up this Canisius team because they are off to a pretty good start in conference play, actually.
And they've won, what is it, 6 or 7 in a row. It's right on the screen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8.
Congratulations, David can count incorrectly.
Yeah.
That would be 7 in a row, David, since they lost to Monmouth back in one of those early conference games that they played at the beginning of December. But really playing well right now. They've got a big game coming up this weekend at Iona as well.
Yeah, so big. I mean, 2 big games for Iona. If Iona gets both of those, we might have to stop poking fun at Tim Kluse.
All right, David, let me stick with you. Go ahead. Let's finish off our 13 line beyond Monmouth.
The last team we have in is the Zippers. I have Akron on this line.
Akron, and I was going to maybe have to veto somebody if we didn't get the MAC champion in on this 13 line here. I think they definitely belong here. And David, let me pull up the MAC standings for you here, as we've got Akron at 11-3 overall. Clearly the best power ratings of the conference at this point.
Yeah, and I don't think it's just a mirage either. I think they're the best team in this conference. Ohio also very good, at least the record. But some of those 3 losses, again, I think we were expecting even more out of them, as good as they've been. And I don't know, again, is there a pathway for Akron if they run away from this conference? Can they land inside the bubble?
If they had beaten Creighton, I could have made the argument for a path, but without it, I'm not seeing it.
Yeah, let's start with that Akron profile, though. They lost to Creighton, they lost to Gonzaga, they lost to Youngstown, which is still going to hurt some. They don't have that notable win. They're not going to have a chance for it. I think they get discussed if they do something like go undefeated in conference, but that's really
if they go undefeated, I think you take them, because you're talking about winning a lot of games away from home that aren't necessarily easy to win.
Some of these upcoming games here include Akron hosting Western Michigan and then at Central Michigan. That might be one to kind of circle there on Tuesday night. That's a tough road game there at Central.
It really is.
And then for the OU Bobcats, who I thought might have been the pick for the MAC, they're going to be hosting Kent State, and then they also have a road trip at Buffalo. So we'll have to see if they can keep pace with Akron in the Eastern Division here.
Since you bring up Buffalo, I do have to bring this up to congratulate the Buffalo Bulls for what they did in their conference opener. 86-54 to Toledo. Trust me, it was nowhere near that close. This was one of the worst shellackings I've seen at MAC play in a long time.
Yeah, it was pretty astounding. Buffalo, I guess you could say, is in rebuilding mode. Again, they lost some of the personnel that we thought they were going to have, but wow, not as good as they've been the last couple of years. That's for sure.
All right, John, let me go back to you here as we start off the 14 line. Who would be our next team up in our next conference up?
This is kind of gonna be tricky right here, and I know I'm going out on a bit of a limb, but how about New Mexico State out of the WAC?
I
like that pick.
Yeah, we got a consensus here, actually,
Yeah.
John. New
I
Mexico
thought
State.
I'd be out on a limb here, but I guess not.
And if you look, we see right here the RPI and the KenPom ratings are not that much below the teams that we just saw in the 13 line. So it's definitely makes sense here. Let me go ahead and pull up the WAC standings here. 14-2, one of the best records overall among these under the radar programs as well.
And
Even a vote in the coaches poll.
yes, and if you watch them, I know it's an eye test thing. They're good. I mean, this is a team that's potentially dangerous. Now, I don't know if they can get any higher than the 14 line, maybe the 13 if they blow through it. But this isn't a team you really want to play because, they only beat UTEP by 9 points. That's not that convincing. But
That's a big
they
rivalry.
went to
That's a big
Arizona.
rivalry game, though. So
It's a big rivalry game, yeah. But I mean, they've won on the road. They had the loss at New Mexico, but they've looked good. They looked good in that game against Arizona State.
They did win against Arizona State.
Yeah.
they did a lot better against Arizona State than Colorado was doing tonight. That's for
Right. Yes, that's true.
And I guess, David, here's my question: does this team have a chance to run the table here?
Oh yeah. I mean, they are so much better than everybody else. And last year's team of the people, Grand Canyon, as much as we love them, they just haven't shown it this year. I not only do they have a chance to do it, they should do it. They're going to be favored in every single game they play.
Well, then, David, let me stick with you here. Then, let's say they do that, they run through it, they would get the 1 seed of the WAC tournament, a buy into the semifinals because only 7 teams in that tournament. They lose in the championship game again. They get upset by Bakersfield again in the finals.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they got a shot?
They'll get discussed. The problem is I just don't. What's their best win at Arizona State?
Yeah.
If not Arizona State, it's going to be either Nichols or Irvine.
Right. In the past, I mean, this is more of a Titel question. The committee has not taken teams like that. We've seen teams from the low major conferences with very bloated records get passed over. What was the highest seed line? Did SFA ever land inside the bubble? I don't think they did.
No.
As good as they were.
They've gotten as high as 12, but that
okay.
wouldn't really be inside the bubble, as you put it.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry to say, but
they did win a game in the tournament as a 12, though.
yeah, they did. And maybe they were. I don't remember what the last at large was that year. I was thinking they hadn't. And in one of the years where they beat VCU, I think they only had 2 or 3 losses.
David, let me stick with you here. Beyond New Mexico State, I think we've pretty much below any team that has a shot in that large bid now. So who would be up next?
A team that may have had a shot in it large bid had they run the table, but lost the other night to the Leathernecks. But with the home win over Indiana, I still have Fort Wayne up this high.
And I would agree with you completely there that Fort Wayne is another team that needs to be right here in this discussion. Pulling up the Summit League standings, though, and we see North Dakota State on top. And Salika, is there an argument they can make that actually North Dakota State's the best team in this conference? Not just based on record, but based on how they're playing.
I mean, if I were talking as a Xavier fan, sure, I'd like to see North Dakota State just because that's one of the teams that the Muskies have beaten. But I still think it's hard to overlook what Fort Wayne had done against Indiana, or even if you look at some of their other wins, although there aren't that many outside, Omaha, Oral Roberts, Detroit, Stetson. I mean, it's quantity, but no quality outside of Indiana.
Well, North Dakota State, whose profile I now have up here, has the win over Arkansas State. They've also won at South Dakota State, which broke, I believe, a 23-game home court winning streak for South Dakota State there. David, are you ready to start turning your tunes towards North Dakota State over Fort Wayne soon?
I definitely think they're in the top two. I liked North Dakota State coming into the season. In fact, when they went through that stretch where they lost 3 of 4, I was kind of surprised at how disappointing they were. But they've won 5 of the last 6, as you can see there. The only loss at Arkansas. I think it's a 2-horse race, and they're one of the horses. I don't. This current point in time, I still have Fort Wayne ahead of them, but this North Dakota State team is really good and could certainly pass them.
I just wish they hadn't lost to North Dakota, though.
Well,
Rivalry game, but it might be.
It's a rivalry game. They played twice. They each won on the other team's court, so they did avenge that with a win at North Dakota. And the Fort Wayne, that Western Illinois loss is bad. It's so bad. And that's why I might actually be inclined to say North Dakota State may end up being the best team in this conference at the end of the day. Not much in terms of huge games coming up this week. North Dakota State will be at South Dakota. Let's go ahead and John, let me go back to you here. Who would you have up next after Fort Wayne?
After Fort Wayne, this is where it gets tricky. I mean, I can go with either Eastern Washington out of the Big Sky, or I would probably go with Belmont out of the Ohio Valley. So I'm going to go Eastern Washington here.
I think he said Belmont, didn't he, David?
I thought he said it sounded like he did.
Okay, I thought he said Belmont. So Belmont it is. This is one of the few times in the show I may use my executive power there, John. I'm not that certain that the Big Sky is a 14 seed caliber conference as opposed to. And I think there's a couple teams here that we have not discussed. But I definitely can understand Belmont at this point. Let me go ahead and pull them up. Here's the.
I mean, I really can't understand Tennessee State anymore because they're starting to slip away themselves.
Yeah.
The whole conference is kind of that, but Belmont. They have probably the only team that's actually been playing well enough in the past couple of weeks to actually merit some serious look, I think.
Yeah.
David, here's that Belmont profile. They lost the game. They lost an opportunity to play a game at Green Bay that was postponed. It's probably not going to be made up this season.
Probably not.
Only 12 games is pretty low at this point. Most teams have 15 or 16 at this point as well.
Yeah, it is. Well, and then again, part of it is they had the one game postponed, but their schedule works pretty much the same way everybody else. You get 29 of them. So I don't know why they're kind of behind.
I think the other shock here is that Rhode Island suddenly seems to have a win of significance now.
Yeah, I know. But, I mean, as far as the rest of the Ohio Valley, it's been kind of disappointing. Tennessee State raised some eyebrows with how well they played early in the year, but they've kind of tailed off lately. And there just isn't really anything else there. I think Belmont can run away from the conference.
Actually, I would note here, that Belmont only scheduled 28 games this year. They didn't even schedule their full 29 and then lost one. So they're down. They're actually only going to play a 27-game season. And that is the other reason why it's kind of strange, but yeah, the Tennessee Martin win is a nice win already there. Coming up, they're going to be hosting SEMO, Tennessee Martin versus Tennessee State coming up Saturday as well. David, who's up after Belmont? Are you going to try to argue Eastern Washington also? And
you might not like this team any better because I'm not going where you think I am. I'm going to the bus. I'm going to the Big South, the conference that's doing it right. I like this Winthrop team.
David, I've got a list here where I've put together what I assembled, and this is exactly where I had Winthrop.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
So I believe it or not, I agree with you 100% here, and I hate doing that, as we discussed earlier. But,
right, yeah.
But Winthrop only 2-1 behind Longwood, who's out to a good conference start, but is not a good team. But look at it.
One out of conference. Oh, brother.
David, we're doing this again. Look at this. 5 teams tied at 2-1. I know it's still early season, but this is the same thing the Big South did last year.
And the year before. I mean, and with the tournament being at campus sites this year, it's going to be a lot of fun. It was fun before, but it's going to be a lot of fun now. And even Charleston, Southern, and Presby are just 3 games out of first. The more games they play, the further they'll be out of first. Right?
True.
And the big thing, if you include Winthrop, is their win at Illinois is getting bigger and bigger as well.
Right.
Yes. All right, John, who would you have after Winthrop?
Who would I have after Winthrop? Besides the team I'd already mentioned?
If you want to mention Eastern Washington, we'll do it. Okay, here we go. We'll go Eastern Washington. We'll go to the Big Sky. You look at the Ken Palm ratings. We still take a huge jump from 136 to 239, which is why I think we're still a seed line high for Eastern Washington. But uh, let's go ahead and pull up the Big Sky standings here, John, for us to take a look at. And I'm not even certain that Eastern Washington is the best team in this conference at the moment, quite honestly.
Yeah, I actually picked Weber for me, but
But John, I gave you the conference, so it's yours. I agree with David; it should have been Weber. But go ahead, make your case for Eastern Washington and why they are the best team in the conference.
I know they've played only one game, but there was also a road game against their, I guess you could say, their travel partner, and that was the Idaho Vandals. I mean, they did a pretty good job defensively against them, and were able to pull out that win in the Kibbe Dome.
I guess they actually have just finished off Montana State tonight, so they are now 2-0. We'll try to get those standings updated here. In fact, David, let me go back here. I'm going to hit a quick button here. I'm going to get our standings updated as we speak. Live updates on
the air. This is exciting stuff up to the second.
But David, we want to make the case for Weber State while we're getting the updates. It takes a minute or so to load in.
There
it is.
Yeah, there it is.
Still the luckiest team in Division One.
Yeah, I mean it's close. It's just I just like what Weber had done recently. They're off to a good start in conference play, just winning the 2 games. And if you pull up their profile here, which is freshly updated, there it is. You know, they've won 5 straight. Now, Utah Valley, Utah State, we're not talking about big ones, but of the 5 straight that they've won, 3 were true road games. So I think that's always going to impress me.
Well, I think it's close. I think it's going to be an interesting battle. You can see they'll be playing Eastern Washington coming up January 14th.
Yeah.
Definitely a game to circle coming up here. As far as this week, Eastern Washington will be hosting Montana. Weber will be at Idaho State coming up this weekend. David, I'm up to you next. Who do you got next?
Who do I have next? Let me see. It was my safety college when I was applying. The Yale Bulldogs.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Princeton. Okay, we'll go to Yale instead.
I've been so disappointed in Princeton that I just couldn't do it. Do you actually like them more than Yale right now?
Well, let's pull up the Ivy League standings here. I know everybody is tied still with a same conference record, but Yale 7-5, Princeton 7-6. It's the same overall record. The thing that was a differentiator for me, honestly, David, was I looked at the Ken Palm ratings, and Princeton was the only one with the top 100 there, and the same with the Sagarins.
Yeah,
Yale's so close though. It's a coin flip. I will agree with that.
Yeah, and let's not forget Yale's big win at Washington.
Okay. But Slika, you mentioned Harvard playing well lately. Do you want to make a case for them that they should be the Ivy League champions here?
I don't want to make a case for them quite yet, but I'm actually on the Puppets bandwagon as far as Yale goes. I suppose if John T. were here, he'd probably be on the RPI bandwagon just so the Penn Quakers can get in.
Yeah, huge game this weekend. The first of the 2 Penn Princeton. It's very early for that game, but with the Ivy League adopting the conference tournament, that late Penn Princeton game that we always used to get during championship week is gone now. It's being weekend instead. They moved it way up in the season.
Which is another reason why you're also going to have Yale playing a non-D1 opponent against Mitchell College.
Huge Yale Mitchell College game.
Yes.
Be glued to that.
Yale and Mitchell College.
Sleek, let me head back to you.
How is Mitchell College?
John, do you want to either answer who Mitchell College is or give me another team? Either way.
I think I'll just go with another team, and I think we have to go to the America East right here.
Yes.
Sadly, it will not be the team of the people.
Oh!
It will be the team across the Green River, and that is the UVM Catamounts.
What? Wait, I just typed in team of the people.
There you go.
Okay. Vermont, actually, the Catamounts are playing really good right now. We'll pull up the America East standings here, John. 1-0 in conference only, having won tonight, but 11-5 overall. Clearly the best power ratings in the conference.
Yep, New Hampshire also had an opportunity to get to 1-0 with their opener, but stumbled against Stony Brook in Jeff Bowles' America East debut.
Yeah, and here's Vermont. They've won at Siena, who has been very disappointing, but it's a nice win. They've beaten Eastern Michigan, who's also been very disappointing. But
they've beaten some teams that we thought would be good, but have turned out to be.
And they've beaten Yale, who's not that good, but you guys think is. But actually, it's a very nice profile for Vermont for an America East team, though, David.
Right, it is. And America East got all the way up to the 13 line last year in Stony Brook, where we normally see them in this 15-16 area. I think they're back there this year.
Well, I'll tell you, if Vermont can dominate this conference, their losses, none of their losses are bad. Providence, Houston, South Carolina, Northeastern, Butler, all teams that we've discussed in one capacity or another tonight. So just something to keep an eye on. Some of the upcoming games, and it become the kind of a rivalry game here. Albany and Stony Brook coming up this weekend, one game to look at. And New Hampshire, tough road game coming up Wednesday at Albany.
Yeah, need to rebound and win that one. And, they need to pull themselves up.
You skipped over the cat fight next Wednesday. Catamounts and Bearcats.
Yes, also the Catamounts and the Bearcats, the cat fight. David, who's up next? Who's the last of the 15 seeds?
The last of the 15 seeds is the Patriot League champion Bucknell Bison.
Bucknell Bison. We've been talking a lot of Lehigh this year, especially after what they did in their first game of the season against Xavier. We're done with them especially after what happened tonight, though, aren't we?
Yeah. Eventually, you got to quit losing close games. You're the one that says, like, good teams don't lose close games; they win them. Good teams will occasionally lose a close game, but Lehigh seems to be losing game after game after game.
Yeah, and tonight it was it was at home to Loyola, who is not a team we've discussed at all this season. You can't do that.
Right.
Let's go here. Well, John, how about BU out to a 3-0 start in conference? Is there a case for them?
Yeah, there's going to be a case to be made for them as long as they're playing on the roof.
Well, they play all the games on the roof these days.
They play the roof. We love the roof.
Now, the Patriot League, though, is so up in the air. I decided to figure out what games were the key upcoming games. David, I just threw all of them in there.
Oh, very nice. That's how you do it.
I gave up on this conference trying to find out what was good because I don't know what team is good. Although I would circle this one now, this Wednesday game, Lehigh at Bucknell. I think it could be a real important one.
Right, because if Lehigh is going to kind of contend, they who knows.
John, why don't you give me your next team up?
I think if we're talking about the first of the 16s, I'm going to go with NC Central right here.
Oh, and I was going to make a lot of noise if we ended up sending NC Central to Dayton because I do not think they belong there. I think that this team is another team that has a chance to just run through its conference and maybe win every single conference game this year, David.
Yeah, I think they should. I don't know if they'll run the table, but I do know this. If NC Central runs the table, they will lose in the quarterfinals of the conference tournament, as everyone who runs the table in this conference seemingly does.
Now,
although last year was an exception.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, though. I'm discussing a team being this dominant that is 6-5 versus D1, but let's take a look at what everybody else has done against D1.
Wow, that is – I think I see one team with a 300 record and no one else that's above 200 if my puppet math is correct there.
Now let's go over to the Ken Palm ratings. Again, 152 for NC Central, not good. Nobody else in the top 200. Nobody else in the top 300. Okay.
That's amazing. That is amazing.
I also want to give a shout out to North Carolina A&T down here. One of 3 teams left without a win against Division One. We're gonna get to the other 2 in a minute, but the only 3 teams left at D1 that do not have a D1 win. A&T is one of them, despite the fact that they almost won at Georgia Tech.
Right.
Who then turned around the next game and beat North Carolina.
Right.
I still haven't figured that out yet.
Although if any team is due to finally make a return at home, it will be NC Central with their upcoming games against Eastern Shore and Delaware State.
David, who is the last team that avoids Dayton?
I kind of went back and forth on this, but I ultimately settled on not Sam Houston, but Nichols.
Really? You did
Yeah.
not go Gulf Coast?
Gulf Coast, it would have been my next team.
Okay.
Should we go Gulf Coast? I don't.
We can go Nichols State. We can put a
Yeah.
280 Ken Palm team up there. We're
It's
at
just Nichols
238.
now. They're making a big fuss about that.
Are they?
Yeah, so leave it Nichols State.
I apologize. Let's make it Nichols.
Yeah.
It's better to go Nichols than go something like Quarters, isn't it, David?
We don't want quarters. We want halves. We don't want quarters. I'm not gonna let it happen. The women do it and they do it wrong.
So bring a $50 onto the show next week.
Yeah, we're not going quarters.
All right. Nichols State 2-0, tied with New Orleans at the top of the Southland standings. But David, what we really discussed before this was how disappointing Sam Houston has been off to a 1-2 start in college.
Yeah, and it's kind of inexplicable. They didn't look great out of conference, but they looked, I thought, better than anyone else. And it's just so surprising to see them go in there and drop the kind of games that they have. I mean, Houston Baptist Transitional, Central Arkansas, a 3-win team. And then they go to McNeese State, who's also a 3-win team, and they had to sweat that one out. Just what happened to them?
Just for information, David, Houston Baptist has been transitional for about 6 or 7 years now, but
Recently transitional.
recently is good. Okay.
Yes, I said recently.
Or transitional for the second time, because if you go into the record books, Houston Baptist actually has an appearance in the 1984 NCAA tournament.
Oh, that's correct. They did drop out of NCAA D1 and come back. John, is there anyone else in the Southland that was even worth mentioning?
Well, I suppose we could give a bit of a shout out for New Orleans, who's also in their own, shall we say, second tour of duty in Division I after briefly transitioning down for a few years.
I actually have to give a shout out to one other thing here that happened over the weekend. Stephen F. Austin lost at McNeese State, 69-54. Not a huge surprise. It's not that great of an SFA team this year. This is, I think, David, when was the last time the SFA lost a regular season Southland game, though? It's been a while.
2014?
I think it's been 2 years since they lost a Southland game. It's not going to be there. They're going to have quite a few of them this year, but
or a sub 200 team, as the puppet always points out.
Yeah, it's been a while. I think and here they are 0-1 this year. So
1-1 now. Okay, John, let's start off the teams in Dayton. Let's run through the last 4. Who do you got?
Well, we definitely have to put Florida Gulf Coast in here.
We'll go Florida Gulf Coast, or we can go Florida Gold Coast, whoever that
Florida
is.
Gold Coast.
And look at these Ken Palm numbers. I think we did something wrong. I just,
we
you guys made this choice, but so that's how it's going to be.
Okay. Chad just can't seem to do anything.
David, Florida Gulf Coast, who you don't like, despite Ken Palm having this top 100.
Yeah. I think I was looking at the wrong rating. I was looking at RPI, where Gulf Coast is also higher. Nobody else. Jacksonville off to kind of they've kind of turned it around a little bit. And it's going to be fun watching those two go at it, Jacksonville and Gulf Coast. Last year's Stetson team, just 4-9 this year after going on kind of a surprising run in the conference tournament, which they almost won. But other than that, I think it's a 1.5 horse race with Gulf Coast and Jacksonville.
But at least Stetson will be eligible this year for the tournament, unlike last season.
What is wrong with Matt Driscoll and North Florida? This is astoundingly, almost unprecedentedly bad for a program that had been so good in the really ever since he got there.
I'm not ready to give up on the original team, the people NJIT, yet. They've not looked great. They struggled at home with Brown. They got a big lead on them the other night and then proceeded to blow that game, almost blow the game. Needed a last-second block shot to win it, but I still think they've got a shot in this conference, especially if Gulf Coast does slip up. A couple rivalry games coming up this week, by the way. Gulf Coast is at Stetson, North Florida at Jacksonville.
Yeah, it should be fun. Opening in Do they do that on the bookends? Open and close?
Well, let's pull up Gulf Coast schedule here to find out. As David makes us wait for this, and they do.
Yeah,
Look at that.
that's
They
what I
do
thought.
do it on
Yeah.
bookends. Yep. All right, David, why don't you tell me who do you have up next? There's only 3 teams left, 3 conferences
Yes,
left.
and it's our favorite conference, and I don't think that that's too much of hyperbole or exaggeration. The Blackbirds, LIU Brooklyn.
You're going to go LIU Brooklyn because that was my biggest question of where you were going to go in the Northeast Conference, which is a conference we do love. I was just at the Fairleigh Dickinson SFPA game the other night, but it's another conference that you could flip a coin between almost any of the 10 teams. Who's the best team?
Yeah,
in the conference?
Fairleigh Dickinson off to a 2-0 start, which has tripled their win total on the season. I still just think the Blackbirds are the best team, but I mean, so much heat in this conference.
I was actually fairly impressed with Fairleigh Dickinson, having seen them in person. I thought this SFPA team was a pretty good team. They've got some talent there. They've got some depth there, and they kind of blew them out of the water. And St. Francis PA blew out St. Francis Brooklyn tonight by about 300 points. So
yeah.
I like how Chad said he could flip a coin to see which team is going to come out on top. Are there any 10-sided coins out there I don't know about?
Maybe a few quarters that are kicking around.
We're not going in the quarters. We're not doing quarters. Women do quarters, not the men. We're never.
Some key upcoming games, but not the big rivalry game that we all look forward to between LIU Brooklyn and St. Francis Brooklyn quite this week yet.
Yeah.
Hey, John, we got 2 teams left. Where are you going? You going Big West or are you going SWAC?
We have to shout out to a team that's wrapped up a 6-9 record that still has yet to play a home game, and that is Texas Southern out of the SWAC.
Texas Southern, the SWAC coming in here at number 67. Let's pull up the SWAC standings here. And David, I do not want to talk Texas Southern or Jackson State. I want to go all the way down to the bottom here. I mentioned North Carolina A&T winless against D1, winless against anybody, Mississippi Valley State. Winless against anybody, Alabama A&M.
Yes, and this has huge tournament implications.
Saturday.
Because it
5
has
p.m.
huge centenary implications, and the Centenary Award winner is automatically submitted for consideration. So huge. Is that the game of the day on Saturday?
That is going to be the under-the-radar game of the day on Saturday, despite some great games like North Florida Jacksonville, Florida Gulf Coast Stetson. We've got to go Alabama A&M, Mississippi Valley State, Penn Princeton.
I think the Celtic Devils get this one. Alabama A&M is horrendous. If you don't get that, I hope that sometimes – as you were saying, Mississippi Valley State streams their games. Sometimes they don't. I hope they stream this one because if you haven't seen Alabama A&M play, you need to. It is unbelievable.
And by the way, this is a matchup. It's going to be a matchup between 349 Ken Palm and 351 Ken Palm. There's only one team that's snuck in there in between them anywhere. It's
I know we've said it often this year, but if Missouri is blowing you out, that is not a good sign.
Right.
David, all that's left is the Big West.
And no one is more deserving of the 68 spot than this year's Big West. And this is a league that doesn't really get teams inside the bubble very often, but we've had teams that were on it. And it's just kind of surprising that it's as weak as it is this year, but I went with UC Davis.
You went with UC Davis. I would have gone with Irvine just because they got slightly higher power rating numbers and really blew out Long Beach State last night.
Yeah, they did. Irvine's pretty good, too. It's kind of, as you say, a coin flip, I think.
Yeah.
So naturally, I have to go with Cal State Northridge for finally putting their camera on the proper side of the court.
Yeah.
In the years past, it looked like it said Nusk instead of CSUN.
Yeah, it was one of those, if you watch the Big West streaming, that was always upside down.
Since we got that done, Sleeka, next year we've got to do something about St. Francis Brooklyn. That dog is upside down on the stream every single game. Yeah. We got to flip that court around as well here. We've got to work on that one. But Anything else worth discussing in the Big West here?
No, it's just shockingly bad. Shockingly bad.
Well, on that note, let me pull up our final bracket here. This is our 1 through 68 seed list. Any changes that need to be made, David?
Yes, we need to. Well, we need to move Nebraska up to the 2 line, and I think we need to take TCU out and put someone else in.
Okay. John, any changes that you would make? Because I just vetoed David's.
I'm just looking at some of our, under the radar seating right here. I probably would have flipped Nichols and Florida Gulf Coast, but I don't have any other major complaints here.
In fact, we're going to go ahead and do that.
Yeah, I think we. Yeah, that's.
I think we.
Yeah.
We'll go ahead and make that change. And there it is. That is our final seed list. We're going to go ahead and have that bracketed. You can find it. David, can you point everybody to where
it's way down there. Yeah, this is a long post.
It's a long post. We're going to probably have all 3 of these things in the same post, so go ahead and take a look for that down there. But don't look at any of that until after you watch this.
Yeah, you gotta watch. You gotta watch these first.
I told you at the start. But on that note, I guess any final thoughts here, John?
I think we've covered just about everything in terms of the 1 through 68 seed list, the first run of the year.
And David?
No, we got you all up to date. And again, it's all fluid. It'll all change. There's probably 1 or 2 teams that aren't even in the bracket right now that'll play their way up there, and somebody that's in the protected seed range that might fall way down or miss the tournament entirely. It ebbs and flows as the season goes along.
And I guess my last comment here would be that I think we're down to a group of 5 teams now that still have a shot at an at-large bid from these under-the-radar conferences, Wichita State being the clear one. Middle Tennessee, UNC Wilmington, who we actually thought were above the end of the at-larges tonight. Valpo and Texas Arlington right below that. Those are the 5 teams. Monmouth had been that 6th team. They've kind of fallen off of the pace now with what they did this past week, though.
Yeah, I agree.
Down to 5. And by the end of the season, we may be down to about 2, but we'll see.
Right.
Then on that note, though, on behalf of John Salika, who's down there, and David Griggs is over there, and me, I'm right here. Have a great night, everybody, and we'll talk to you again next week.